There is a flaw in the way we see the cosmos, and it has nothing to do with the quality of our telescopes or the limits of our mathematics. It is older than any tool we have ever built, and it is built into the very fact that we are here at all, asking the question. Every piece of evidence we have ever gathered about space, every observation, every measurement, every conclusion we have drawn about how violent or welcoming or safe the night sky is, was gathered by something that lived long enough to gather it. That sounds obvious. It is not, because buried inside that simple fact is one of the most unsettling ideas in the history of science, and most people walk past it without stopping. We call it the Anthropic Shadow. Think about what our picture of the night sky is actually built from. We look outward and we see galaxies crashing in slow motion, stars exploding across distances that words cannot honestly describe, black holes tearing the fabric of space and time in ways that produce more energy in a single second than our sun will create across its entire 10 billion year lifespan. And from the surface of this small, warm, perfectly placed planet, we observe all of it from a safe distance and call it beautiful. We document it. We make films about it. We feel wonder rather than fear, because none of it has killed us yet. But here's what we are not seeing. We cannot observe the planets that were wiped out by nearby star explosions before anything on them had time to look upward and wonder. We cannot observe the worlds that reached our level of life and were ended by something they never had the chance to name. We cannot observe the failed experiments of cosmic history, the worlds where the chemistry was almost right, where the conditions almost held, where something almost grew that could have built a telescope and noticed us, because those worlds produced no one to aim a telescope back. Every single data point in our picture of deep space comes from a survivor, and a list made entirely of survivors does not tell you how dangerous the water is. It only tells you how the survivors feel about it. This is what makes the Anthropic Shadow so structurally difficult to escape. It is not a mistake we can fix by being more careful or building better tools. It is a bias that is locked into the act of looking itself. You can only measure space from a position that lived long enough to stop measuring, which means the most dangerous things deep space has ever done are permanently hidden from us, not because they left no evidence, but because they left no one. When we look at the apparent rarity of world-ending events in Earth's deep past, we are not looking at a fair sample of what space does to planets. We are looking at the history of a planet that did not get wiped out. The events that did wipe out other worlds are missing from our record for the same reason that the losers of a war are missing from the winners' history books. The sample is made by the outcome. The great filter section. Consider the famous question of why space is so quiet. The agonizing silence of a night sky that, by all math, should be full of alien life. We look into the dark, expect to hear signs of life, and find only an empty, heavy stillness. To explain this, scientists often point to the idea of the great filter, the thought that somewhere along the timeline from a single strand of DNA to a galaxy-spanning empire, there's a wall so incredibly difficult to cross that almost no one lives through it. But notice how our basic human thinking handles this idea. We look back at Earth's history. We see that we lived through the change from tiny cells to complex animals. We see that we survived the split from early primates to tool-using humans, and we assume the hard part must be behind us. We look at our own history and see an unbroken chain of miraculous success, concluding that the hardest parts of life's history are already done. The Anthropic Shadow reveals the devastating flaw in that logic. Even if 99% of all worlds are completely wiped out by the change from industrial societies to advanced technology, our own history books would look exactly the same as they do right now. We would still see a clean, beautiful line of progress. We would still praise our strength. A civilization standing directly on the edge of the ultimate cliff would feel just as safe, just as destined for the stars, as one that had truly conquered the dark. The silence of the night sky isn't a puzzle waiting to be solved. It is a warning hidden by our own existence. The great filter doesn't look terrifying to us because any version of us that failed to pass it isn't here to write the paper. And this is where it starts to reach further than most people are willing to follow it. Because the Anthropic Shadow does not just affect how we understand the past. It poisons how we model the future. Every risk assessment we have ever made about the long-term survival of human life, every calculation about the chance of extinction from asteroid impact, from giant volcanoes, from the eventual growth of the sun, is built from data collected by a civilization that has not yet gone extinct. We are using a survivor's thoughts to model a survivor's odds, and the circularity of that is not a minor math problem. It is the foundation the entire calculation rests on. The thinkers who formalized much of this logic made a point that deserves to be taken more seriously than it usually is. The fact that intelligent life exists on Earth is not strong proof that intelligent life commonly survives. It is only proof that at least one group lived long enough to notice. In a space running billions of planetary experiments at the same time, we would expect some outcomes to produce viewers even if the overwhelming majority of those experiments end in silence. And the viewers, by definition, would look at their own life and conclude that life is normal. That intelligence is what planets naturally produce given enough time. That space, on balance, is the kind of place where things like us get to last. We are like a gambler who has won 20 rounds of Russian roulette in a row, looking at the gun in our hands and concluding that the game is perfectly safe, that the rules of the machine are rigged in our favor, and that we are fundamentally meant to survive the next pull of the trigger. We confuse our staggering, statistical luck with cosmic design. We look at the night sky and feel curiosity rather than dread because everything that ever looked at the night sky and felt dread had that feeling proved right before it could pass the information on. The outer dark is not hiding its danger from us. We are hiding it from ourselves by being the kind of thing that has to be alive to look. And perhaps the most honest thing we can say, given all of this, is something that our hearts resist, but our logic cannot escape. We have no reliable way of knowing how rare we are. We have no fair method of measuring how close the margin was. We do not know how many times the conditions that made us almost held and then didn't, on worlds we will never name, around stars we will never reach, in the long patient history of a space that does not particularly care which of its experiments get to write down what they found. We only know that we are here. And that being here is the one thing that was always going to make us feel like being here could